You've probably heard about this little app before where you can play music with the green logo. It's Spotify. You also know that it's one of the most important musical platforms to get your music on and also get your music heard. So let's talk about this for a little bit. My name is Westy Verheij. I'm the owner and founder of Sakura Music, but I'm also a music producer myself as U-Oak or Unseen Oak. I also have a radio show and I'm a curator. A curator on Spotify in particular. I love digging for new music. I love building playlists, and this has helped me get discovered by bigger record labels, but it's also helped me start my own record label and also build my own audience on Spotify. So building your own audience on Spotify is nowadays such an important part of building a successful music career. I hear it from all sides, from the booking agents to the festival owners to the record label owners and A&Rs. They're all talking about Spotify. Spotify numbers, getting as much plays and streams on Spotify. And while this is great, I personally think that it's more important to build a brand on Spotify because you're sort of servicing your fans. You're making a experience, you're building an experience for your listeners, for your fans. And then the benefit, the bonus benefit that you're getting is the streams, but also eventually the royalties that you're going to get from these streams. So I'm going to discuss in short what I think are the best things to do, which you can do now. You can start now on Spotify. And also give a brief summary of what I did on Spotify and how it got me into the position that I am in right now. So years ago, when I started producing melodic house as U-Oak, I then also started curating my own playlist as well as making mixtapes on SoundCloud. The mixtapes I did on SoundCloud, the same sort of branding that I did there, which was usually melodic deep house or melodic house or anything related to that, I started making playlists about that same type of genre, same style on Spotify. So one of my first playlists that I made on Spotify was Melodic Deep House. You can still find it today. It's around 40,000 followers right now. And it's been one of my most successful playlists for years now. Even though it took a long time to build it and it still keeps growing, it's something that you can also do now. You can start today. All the playlists that I've made, all success I've had on Spotify, it started somewhere. So I'm going to give you a couple tips on how you can get the ball rolling on Spotify. Even if you're a beginning artist or you're an advanced artist, most of the fundamentals on Spotify are basically the same. So let's get into it. Some of the biggest questions I get nowadays is, do you actually have to sign with a record label? So in short, the answer is no, you don't have to sign with a record label. I talked about this before, that I'm a huge advocate of building your own brand, building what you're doing. The same thing that I did with Melodic Deep House, my playlist that you can find. I also did some events, some parties with Melodic Deep House. So everything was sort of revolving around Melodic House. Then later, when I found that I got more successful on Spotify and I started getting into a sort of position of value where I have big playlists, everyone knows me as a curator, and then they also start to know me as a producer within house and deep house, melodic house. I started to think to myself, I have all this value that I can offer myself, but I can also offer this to other artists. So I had a network and I was able to push other artists, and that was how I got to start my first record label. Now that I have my second record label, Sakura, which is really around melodic house and deep house, because I've already had all the experience beforehand and curating on Spotify and having that network, it puts me in a position where I can guarantee that the tracks that we put out get a certain amount of success. And this type of stuff you can also do with Spotify. So Spotify can be a great stepping stone to either getting your track signed to a label or starting your own record label. Everything that I'm actually discussing in our own Spotify course here on Production Music Live, going from the beginning all the way to the end. But I want to compress it into a short summary of how I basically did it. So do you actually have to sign with a record label nowadays? In short, the answer is no, you don't have to. But it can be an added benefit. So what I tend to look for when I'm signing my own tracks to external record labels, how strong is their presence on Spotify? Is there actually something they can do? In my particular case, because I have a strong presence on Spotify myself, I also look at what else can they do. So how long have they been in the business? What type of connections do they have? Do they have connections to radio stations, to festival organizers? Can they get me gigs? How can they take my artist career to the next level? But let's say you already have that handled. You're a touring DJ, you have all the gigs in place, you have all the connections, you have the right network, but you're lacking the plays on Spotify, you're lacking that engagement on Spotify, then you might actually be looking for a record label that can get you those streams. And that would probably bring you to a record label like myself that has a really strong network in the Spotify scene and with melodic house in particular. So then the other question is, do you actually need the record labels? Well, you don't have to, honestly. Nowadays, you can easily upload your music to Spotify through these online distribution services. I talk more about this in the course on Production Music Live. There's a dedicated course about Spotify. But in short, you don't need to have a record label to get your tracks out there, but it can be a shortcut in getting a lot of streams quite quickly, because it took me years to get to the position that I am in right now, and that puts me in the position to offer all that value that I have accumulated over the years and offer that value to the artists that actually sign on my record label. So a lot of artists, I talk to them about how they found my label or why they decided to sign with Sakura. And most of them, they also say, and there was a big factor, that we have such a strong presence on Spotify. Now, of course, Spotify isn't the only thing that I offer these artists, because we also have a lot of DJ support. We have a radio show, which is worldwide, but those are all extra details. The main core on why a lot of artists decide to sign with us is Spotify, and also because they actually get paid because of it. So Spotify is a nice way to get paid, to get your music heard, but it's definitely one of the most essential platforms out there right now. And to be fair, you don't need a record label anymore, but it can be a very big help. So in the full course that we offer on Production Music Live, I go super in detail on how I build my playlist, on how you can build your own playlist, how you can generate ideas for making a great playlist around melodic house, deep house, but any genre really, because most of it is quite universal. But there are some tips and tricks on how to make a playlist that performs well, that gets discovered quite easily, and also sort of sucks in your audience and then make sure that the audience keeps listening to the playlist that you've made. But I'm going to summarize some of the tips and tricks or the highlights on playlisting and why you should do it in general. So I personally think that making a playlist shouldn't come out of a perspective of I want to create or generate as much streams as possible. I think you need to think about it that you're offering a service to the people that like your music. So when people are listening to my artist profile, for example, what I can then do is say something like, hey guys, I have a lot of music that I really like, that I listen to. Here's a playlist of all the stuff that I enjoy. And that's actually how I founded one of my most successful playlists called Electronic Chill and Deep House, because it was just a playlist that I listened to myself on a Sunday morning when I was just chilling. And eventually I noticed that a lot of people were liking the music that I was putting in there, and they started following this. So that's the most organic type of traffic that you can get. And that's also the type of traffic that you want. Because if you get sort of fake traffic or forced traffic where you're forcing people to listen to your playlist by spending a lot of ad budget on and really forcing, like jamming some sort of style or some sort of preference to an audience, they're probably not going to be very engaging. So if you want to create an engaging audience, you also need to create some sort of a organic feeling to it where people actually want to listen to what you're doing. And that can only come from good curation. When you're building playlists, the curation is the most important part, in my opinion. Because if you don't curate your playlist well enough, then people are gonna be disconnected with what you're trying to do quite quickly. You've probably seen some of the playlists popping up that have a lot of followers, and then when you listen to them, they feel a bit off. They feel like someone abandoned this playlist, that someone isn't really putting in the effort into the curation, and the songs don't really fit together like you would probably make your own playlist. If you make a DJ mix, for example, you're really looking at which songs work well together, and you can take this concept and apply that to your playlist the same way that I basically do it. I have my radio show, and all the tracks that I select in the radio show are tracks that I really like and I feel like they fit with the audience that I have. So those are also the type of tracks that I put in my playlist and then sort of promote it to my audience. So when thinking about these type of things, when you're creating a playlist, can already give you a really big step up. And like myself, if you then apply all the tips and tricks that we discuss in the course, that we go into detail about, you can really effectively grow your playlist. And you don't have to spend a lot of time and effort or money on building a very strong playlist, because if you set it up correctly, then everything will grow organically over time. Then some tips on getting onto playlists. So you probably try to find some curators or find the right people that own these certain playlists. There's a couple of tips and tricks, and I want to summarize some of the things that we talk about in the Spotify course. But finding the right curators can be quite easily. So if you go to a artist that you like, you can probably find them on the Discover On section. There's a section on the artist profiles, and you can just find playlists that work well. So how they work and how to approach them is something that we go in depth in the course, but you can already find some successful playlists there. Then another good tool could be something like SubmitHub, for example. SubmitHub is a website where there's a lot of aggregated playlisters and curators on there. I'm there as well. So if you want to submit tracks to any of my playlists, you can also find us on SubmitHub. You can also check out our website. We have a couple of ways to send in your tracks if you want to do that, if you think your tracks fit our playlist well. But this is a nice place because you're sort of forcing people to listen to your songs. Basically, there are two ways of pitching your tracks. First of all, you can pitch a track, sort of cold email, cold call, which basically means that you do not know the curator personally, you've never talked to them before, or maybe like a little bit. You don't really have anything to offer in return, because let's be honest, a lot of people, they put a lot of time into building a playlist. So if you want to get onto their playlist, you're going to have some sort of value in return, whether this be including them in a DJ mix or putting them in your playlist, which would be something like playlist trading or cross promotion. If you don't have that and you're just cold pitching to someone, there's a very good chance, the bigger the curator, the bigger the chance that you're going to get ignored. So I'm friends with a lot of curators in other genres, but a lot of them are deep house, melodic house, and sort of chill type of playlists. And including myself, but some of them are even bigger playlisters. They get thousands of submissions every week. And to be honest, you need a full team of people to listen to all this music, to go through all this music. So a lot of the curators I know have already decided that any pitches through email from people that you don't know, they just don't get listened to because they don't have time for it. So then you ask the question, okay, how can I make sure that they actually listen to my track? Well, that's where platforms like SubmitHub or sort of paid submissions come into place. Even though you pay only €1 or €1.50, it's a small fee, but it forces the curator to listen to your track. And when they have to listen to your track, they might actually like it, which is a much better position opposed to you sending an email and then not getting heard at all. And that's just the cold truth on how it is. And on the other side, if you do have a playlist that actually works and you're sort of hot emailing someone, you already know the person that you're emailing, then it usually goes about, hey, what can you do in return? So in order to increase your position of getting playlisted by other curators, you should be building your own audience and network. And then you start slow and you become bigger and bigger and bigger. And the larger your own network and the larger your own playlists are, the easier it becomes to then get included in other people's playlists. And that's just something that you need to build over time. Like I said before, it took me years to get to the position that I am in right now. Starting slow, having a playlist with only 1,000 followers up to the hundreds of thousands of followers that we have now in our network, it just takes time. So build that value, but start today. You can already do that by making your own playlist. I give you all the tips and tricks on how to do that. But start today, build your value, and then approach the curators that you want to be featured on. It does two things. First of all, you can actually offer something in return. And second of all, it shows a certain dedication. And usually the people that are really dedicated and want to achieve something, they tend to achieve it quite quickly. So just keep hammering at it and eventually you'll get into the playlist that you want. So let's go into your profile. What are some of the do's and don'ts on setting up your profile? Personally, I think having a right biography and picture are no-brainers when it comes to setting up your profile, but you'll be surprised on how few people actually take the time to set it up correctly. So a couple of tips on setting up your profile correctly could include having professional photos taken. There's a difference between shooting a photo on a camera phone or a phone camera versus using an actual professional camera with a professional lens. You probably know someone that has a camera or someone that can operate a camera like that. Go do a photo session or photo shoot just a day. Find a cool location that fits with your brand. So if you're a melodic house and you're more towards the melodic techno side, you can maybe find some industrial place like a harbor or machinery or something industrial and cool, and then put your own twist on it. Or if you're like me and you have more organic type of melodic house that's more inspired by nature, I tend to do photo shoots in the woods or in nature or with water or stuff like that. Try to find what your brand is and then go do a photo session or a photo shoot in that environment, and it will also resonate a lot more with the people listening to your music. Especially when they see your picture, they already have some sort of idea of what kind of music that you're putting out, and it gets them in the right mindset. So just look at some of the more famous artists within the genre and look at what they're doing and how it sort of resonates, the visuals that they present on their profile, how it resonates with the music that they're putting out. Everything sort of blends together. It sort of makes sense. And that's something that you can already copy off of successful artists and give that impression of you already being there. The sort of fake it till you make it type of stuff. Then when it comes to the biography, even though I'm not actually sure if a lot of people read it, the biography can be something that can give a bit more insight to your fans. I personally recommend having someone else just write a biography about you. Personally, I had my friend write my biography because it feels kind of weird writing about yourself and your accomplishments. So what you can do is you just write down on a piece of paper a couple of bullet points, the stuff you've done. So maybe you've DJ'd at some festival, you've had 1 million streams on your track, or you've had a radio show, you did a mix, or anything that you've done with your artist profile. Write it down in bullet points, give it to your friend that actually knows you, and let them write a biography about you. And that sort of completes the whole profile that you have, and it gives you a much more of a professional look and feel to your profile. So then when you do have those hits coming out, at least you look professional. So now that we've talked about Spotify, I want to give you a quick summary of some tips you can, or some actions that you can take right now to improve your success on Spotify or to take your career to the next level. Something that I want you to do after you've watched this video. I want you to do these immediately because it takes a couple of minutes and it really gets the ball rolling. It builds the momentum. And the first tip I'm going to give you to complement what I just said is consistency. So with consistency, it doesn't particularly mean that you have to put out an original track every month, but at least try to put out some content or something new and fresh on Spotify or any social media platform for that reason. Put out something fresh every month or so because it builds the algorithm, it builds the consistency, and that's something that Spotify loves. So what can you do, for example? Let's say you've released an original track, and then a month later, for example, you can release an ambient version, or another month later, you can release a remix. So when you've released an original track, the first thing I would do is then ask people around you to do remixes for you. So at least you have some extra content that you can put out on your Spotify profile. So that's something that you can do right now. Think about your release schedule, write it down. When is your next original coming out? When is the original after that coming out? And how big is that gap in between those original tracks? And can you get that filled by either making an ambient version, an acoustic version, a piano version, an orchestral version, or having someone else do a remix for you? Build that consistency, build that release schedule, and you'll be surprised on how fast those monthly listeners are gonna grow. Then tip 2 that I can give you is make the playlist. Just do it right now. I mean, we talked about it so much. We have a whole chapter dedicated in the Spotify course about playlisting. I think it sort of shows you how important it is to have this whole playlisting system on Spotify handled. Spotify has become so big because their playlisting system is so easy to use. It's so fluent and so well integrated into their system So the first thing you can do after watching this video, or the second thing you can do after watching this video, is sit down, write it down. What is the idea? What do you want to send out to your audience? Do you want to make a melodic house playlist, a melodic techno playlist? Do you want to make a beach music playlist? Do you want a chill out playlist? Anything that you want to give your audience, the value you want to give your audience, you can do that right after this video. So take out a piece of paper and grab a pen, write it down. What are your ideas? Make that playlist. It's super easy. You probably have 1,000 tracks that you love at the moment. Just throw a bunch of them in a playlist and get the ball rolling. Start a momentum, send it out to your friends, ask them to follow it, ask them to stream it the entire day if it needs to be. Just get that momentum going, and that's something you can do right now. And the third tip I can give you is start pitching. So what I want you to do after this video, after it ends, go on Spotify, find your favorite artist and just have a look at their profile. Which playlists are they featured in? Just go through all the playlists that are non-Spotify owned, find curators, and then find the curators that maybe they have their Instagram handle in the description, they have an email address in the description. Maybe you can find them on SubmitHub or on Daily Playlist or any submission platform, and go pitch your track right now. Just pitch one track. I'm not asking you to pitch to 10 or 100 playlisters. Just pick one curator and pitch your track right now. This gets you into the habit of pitching your own track, not being dependent on a record label to do the promotion for you. Take the matters in your own hand, start pitching yourself right away.